once again, forgive the hum and the quiet noise for the person next door. But now we're moving into actual talking about unintentional homicide. So everything we've talked about so far with murder and manslaughter and all that stuff has been intentional homicide. Now we're going to be talking about unintentional homicide. The thing to note here, actually something that I just found interesting, was unintentional homicide can also include unintentional murder and unintentional manslaughter. All these things here can be seen, and we're going to be talking about taking unjustified risks. We're going to go over the MPC approach and the common law approach, and we'll go over a couple of cases that show these principles that we talk about for unintentional. Okay, so under the MPC approach, there are three different kinds of unintentional homicides. You have murder, you have manslaughter, and you have negligent homicide. For murder, the definition there is reckless plus, which means just extreme recklessness plus an extreme indifference to human life. For manslaughter, you just have regular recklessness, so not reckless plus, but reckless, just regular. And then you have a substantial and unjustified risk, which means that, just a substantial and unjustified risk. And then third, you have the negligent homicide, which means that the person should be aware, plus there's a gross deviation, and another term for that is criminal negligence. So they should be aware plus having criminal negligence, and that will make them guilty of a negligent homicide. Under the common law approach, at least in Pennsylvania, because every common law is a little different, but Pennsylvania seems to be fairly straightforward to understand. So there's two different kinds of unintentional homicide. You have murder in the third degree, and that means that all of the kinds of murder, meaning not premeditated, not during a felony, those are all intentional homicides or intentional murders. And what we talked about here is that murder is having a conscious disregard of life, which is equal to malice, which is equal to murder in the third degree. Second, we have involuntary manslaughter, and this includes either being reckless or grossly negligent. You notice here how those two combined are involuntary manslaughter in the common law approach, but in the MPC approach, they're separate, where reckless equals manslaughter and gross negligence equals negligent homicide. Let's take a couple of examples here. We have People v. Noller. Here is where we actually got the conscious disregard of life underneath the common law approach for murder. So a person is going to be guilty for murder if they have this conscious disregard of human life. In this instance, People v. Noller, they had some dangerous dogs. They were aware of the dangerous dogs, aware of the risk, and they completely disregarded the risk, and the dogs got out and ended up attacking and killing somebody. Here, they would be guilty of either murder or manslaughter. And if we can show that there was underneath the MPC approach, they would be guilty of murder or manslaughter. Because if we can show that there was this extreme indifference to human life, then the jury will decide if it was extremely reckless or reckless plus, or if it was just reckless, which would be manslaughter. In State v. Williams, what happened here is that there were some Native Americans and their infant had a toothache, and they were afraid of taking the infant to the doctor because they didn't want the infant to be taken away, because that was the thing that was going on at the time. But Washington common law at the time has simple negligence as the standard for involuntary manslaughter and not just grossly negligence. So regular common law requires that grossly negligence. So underneath the Washington common law, they were guilty of involuntary manslaughter, and that was because they should have known that they should have taken the child to the doctor. But under regular common law, they would not have been guilty of manslaughter, and that is because it wasn't grossly negligent, or at least a jury would be able to see that it wasn't grossly negligent. So that would be a thing for the jury to decide. But underneath the MPC approach, we're going to notice how the common law has those two together. But underneath the MPC approach, it's going to require grossly negligent to get manslaughter. But here, it's just negligent homicide. Actually, no, I apologize. Ignore that last sentence, because negligent homicide requires gross negligence. And it would have been very hard to prove that the people in this case were grossly negligent. Consequently, they would not have been found guilty as a negligent homicide. Okay, big taking away. Unintentional homicides can include murder, manslaughter, or negligent homicide underneath the MPC approach, or murder or involuntary manslaughter underneath the Pennsylvania approach. And there's definitions specific to those charges in those two different forums. Thank you for listening to this episode of The Law Schoolers. Before I let you go, there are 4 things I want to say. The first thing is, if you enjoyed these episodes and if you enjoyed the website, I would invite you to go and join Law Schoolers Pro. And you can do that by going to lawschoolers.com/join. It's a way for you to support us, but there's also a lot of features there that I think you will enjoy. Second thing is that nearly all of our episodes are unedited. The only ones that aren't are pre-law materials, and the reason for that is so you can actually see the legal material in its raw form as I'm learning it as well. The third thing is that the information contained in these episodes are specifically only for educational purposes. They're not to be used as legal advice, and with that, the fourth thing is, if it is used as legal advice, we are not liable. That is, Law Schoolers is not liable for any legal outcomes. Thank you again for enjoying the show. Have a good one.